Okay. All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming. This week's presentation is called "Am I Black or White?" And looking at me, you're going to say, "What? Is she insane?" But it does have a reason. And also, I said no political correctness. We're talking about Accra, Ghana. So my real African cultural lessons began in Paris. And I think I spoke a little bit about that. And that's where I met and married my second husband, who was from Togo, although he had been living in Paris for 11 years. And even though that marriage didn't last, we're still friends. And I can never underestimate the importance of being with him for the first time I ever went to Africa, and also for Ghana, because it exposed me to a lot of people and things that I probably wouldn't have been exposed to before without him. So my first impression of Ghana, now this was back in 1989, I think it was a bit of a shock, just like the initiation to Zaire was really a shock. The capital, Accra, had mostly dirt streets at that time. The stores were devoid of many basic goods. Politically, at that time, the U.S. and Ghana had some tense relationships. And I was going on my first and only assignment as a budget officer after finishing my training in Washington, D.C. I'd already heard some negative comments about the person who was going to be my direct supervisor. But nevertheless, I was really excited about going to Ghana. I'd read a lot about Ghana. It was the first African country to gain independence. Kwame Nkrumah, whose name was synonymous with the Pan-African movement that he led along with other luminaries. I secretly admired the independence of the current president. I mean, the president that was current at that time, Jerry Rawlings, because he did stand up to US pressure, and there was US pressure and interference in Ghana's internal matters. On the job front, I was off to a really rocky start. Tom, my immediate supervisor, was a retired New York police officer. I had only been in Ghana 1 week when I attended the first admin meeting. There were only 7 officers there, and I was the only Black person. He started the meeting with a very brief introduction of me as the new budget officer, and then he went directly to the various work orders that that were pending. One was submitted by the DCM, that's the Deputy Chief of Mission, who was a Black woman. And he says at the meeting, this work order is from the DCM. It's as stupid as she is. The only reason she is where she is because she's Black and she's a woman. All eyes were on me. And I decided to deal with it the way I often deal with stuff like that. And I made no expression, nothing, I tried not to show how pissed I was, but and I think I did a pretty good job. But once we finished reviewing all the work orders, he turned to me and said to introduce myself. So I told everybody, I said, I'm so happy to be in Ghana, excited and looking forward to working with all of you. And I said, it takes me a while to remember names, so be patient with me. And I said, I haven't had a chance to meet the DCM to evaluate her intelligence, but I've worked with enough dumb white men that a dumb Black woman won't make a difference. And everybody, it got real quiet. And everybody looked at me, and I put on this really innocent look like I didn't know what I said. And he leaned forward and he said, "This is going to be a very interesting tour." And I said, "Well, I hope so, Tom, because I don't like boredom. I like interesting tours, looking forward to it." Yeah. After the meeting, one of the people came up to me and said, do you realize what you said? And I said, "Yeah, it was a declaration of war." I said, "I realized what I said." And the funny thing was that, it wasn't funny at the time, but the first 2 months, he did everything to undermine me. And I found ways around it. And, I finally went into him and said, well, I should back up. I said, besides the ways around him undermining me, I found out that there were two big problems at the embassy. One was that the electric company owed us money, something like $10,000. And for 2 years, we've been sending letters and whatever, and that they ignored. And I said, I wonder if anybody ever went down to the office. And so I decided, I made an appointment to go meet the head guy, introduce myself. And I said, I guess we have something we need to resolve. I said, but, I started a conversation. We ended up laughing and joking about our families and different things. And he had studied in the UK, and, we got along just fine. And he said, I've never met anybody from your embassy. I've gotten letters, but nobody, I guess they feel it's beneath them to come to my office. And I said, well, I certainly don't feel like that. Well, I was hoping that, we could discuss the situation, but he said, okay, well, at another time we'll talk about that. So I said, okay. I said, I'll try to make an appointment in a couple of weeks. Well, in 2 weeks, we got a check for $10,000. It was that important to them, their personal contact. And a similar thing happened with the getting our licenses, because you would have to submit your US license and they would give you a Ghanaian license. And we would eventually get them, but they were taking like 3 and 4 months. And so I went down, talked to that guy, and found out that we had really insulted him when he came to the embassy and treated him very poorly. And I said, listen, that while I'm here, that's never going to happen again. I'm sorry it happened. Anyway, we resolved that. So by the time in my first 3 months, Tom could not deny, what I had done. And so I went to his office and closed the door. And I said, listen, when I look bad, you look bad. This is your section. And we don't have to like each other to work well together. And he said, you have a lot of nerve. I said, well, I hope so. Anyway, to make a long story short, after that, we got along, we worked well together. He actually surprised me by putting me in for a meritorious award. In my mind, he's still a bigot, but we got through it. On the social front, the situation was wonderful. I found out about a tennis club. I'm, as Donald and Delina know, I'm into tennis, and I joined the Aqualon Tennis Club. And even though it says lawn tennis club, there was no lawn to be. Probably when the Brits were there, it was a lawn tennis club, but it was. It turned out to be a great place, a lot of fun. All of the top people were there, the ambassadors of different countries, the high government officials. And so I got to know some, on a social basis, a lot of people that really came in handy later on. As far as my marriage, I had already filed for divorce, but we kept up the appearance of being a couple externally, when dealing with the outside. And we were often invited to people's houses and, learned a lot about Ghana and Ghanaian customs. One of the funny things was we were at one person's house for a dinner, and there was a little girl about, maybe two or three. And she was walking around. When she saw me, she screamed and ran back to her mother. And I was like, oh God, you know what? And the mother said, oh, please don't be offended. It's just that she's afraid of white people. And I said, white people? And a guy next to me said, I was the only non-African there, you know, because Teo, you know, he didn't count certainly as a non-African. So the man next to me said, yeah, he says, yeah, you really shouldn't be offended. A lot of our kids just haven't been exposed to white people. So what is this? You know, there's nothing about me that looks like a white person. And then a few weeks later, we were over somebody else's house, and the little boy just played with me and was like, you know, sat on my lap, and the mother said, oh, every time we have white people over, he loves them. It's, at the time, I just couldn't compute. I could not understand. Later on, even though I must say that the same was true in Zaire, the first African country I lived in. There it was Mundele, and in Lingala they'd call me Mundele, and I found out that meant white person. And in Ghana they would call me Obruni Koko, which means brown white person. Yeah, so later on, I came to understand that really it was a cultural definition of white. You know, anybody that was not African was white in their eyes, and it wasn't a negative. You know, they weren't trying to insult you. In the summer of '89, my supervisor and his family went on leave for the summer, and I was the ranking officer, so I had to take his place. I knew nothing about what he did. I mean, very little about what he did. He covered human resources, shipping, warehouse, communications, building and maintenance. And I was the budget officer. I just dealt with the numbers at that time. We also had a new deputy chief of mission and a new ambassador coming in. And so the DCM came first, and he was really nervous because he was in the same position I was, and that he had no experience even as a DCM, and much less as an ambassador. But they made him chargé, which is like, you know, the substitute ambassador. And in his first week, he got a notification from President Rawlings that they had PNG'd one of our officers. Now that is, for those of you that don't know, it's declaring him persona non grata, which means he has to leave the country. He's not welcome there. And the president only gave us 2 days to get him, his furniture, his pets, everybody packed up and out. I was a nervous wreck, and so was the DCM. But my first thing was calling one of my contacts from the tennis club, who was very high ranked. And I said, you know,
We're unable to hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. And London had a policy at that time of anybody, any pet that came through had to be quarantined for, I think it was 3 weeks or something like that, or they would put them down right there in the airport. They would kill the pet. So I was like, okay, what do I do? Well, this official said, calm down. I know exactly what you need to do. He said, have your DCM contact him and say, okay, we will abide, but we will have to do it by land and send them over to Togo. Togo is the neighboring country. But Togo was also a country that was in opposition. They were always in conflict, Ghana and Togo at that time. And they would not have the control there. And he said, He said, I guarantee you that Rawlings, when you tell him that, he will give you more time. And sure enough, I went back to the DCM, told him, you know, please tell him that we'll abide by his 2-day rule, but they will be sent out through Togo. And we got our extra time. I never did tell him how I came up with that idea because, you know, even this official, he's telling some things about his country that he probably shouldn't. So, you know, that you have to know the politics, the customs, et cetera. I was, this thing about being white. Also, every time I got to go to a village that was outside of the main, within Ghana, within Accra, the capital, a lot of the people had studied abroad or whatever, and you didn't really get that much. You know, they consider you a Black American and stuff. But once you got out, you know, especially the little kids would run by the embassy car and say, you know, hi, white lady, hi, white lady. Like political correctness was not the thing. There was no negative connotation to it. Excuse me. Some of the other things that I had to get used to, because we're talking about culture and language, was that the Ghanaians, although they have their specific accent, they definitely follow the British spelling and syntax and way of speaking. And so one day in the store, I was looking for butter and nobody could understand me. And finally this man says, oh, she's American. They do not pronounce their T's. She means butter. You know? So I learned to start pronouncing it a different way so that people could understand, you know. And I said, no, we don't pronounce our T's. We pronounce them like D's, butter, you know. Another linguistic sort of amusing thing is one day a couple visited us at home, and Theo showed him our scrapbook, and they were looking through the scrapbook, and he said, see, he said, Judy doesn't like to wear pants. She always wears skirts. He didn't even say she always wears skirts. He said she doesn't like to wear pants. And the couple looked at each other with a really strange look, and they didn't make any comment. And then it came up again. And finally the husband said, oh, the Americans mean trousers. You know, and we said, what do you mean? Well, for them, pants were underwear. And he was wondering why this man is saying that his wife doesn't wear underwear, you know, when we barely know them. So I learned to say trousers, not pants. Another linguistic faux pas was at well, not really faux pas, because I was sitting at the tennis club waiting for a court to be free. And one young man that I hit balls with from time to time, he came up and he says, can I knock you up? And I sort of looked at him and didn't know what to say. And I saw there was no reaction from anybody else. And I said, they must mean something different. He says, there's a court free now. I can knock you up until the others are ready. And I said, oh, he means like warm up on the tennis court. Later on, I told him, I said, if you do go to the States ever, you might not want to say that to a young lady or to any lady, you know, just go up to her and say, can I knock you up? You know, it means something different for us. So, you know, that you had to learn the linguistic differences. Unfortunately, of all the countries that I lived in, I learned very much less in the local language in Ghana than any place else. That was for a good reason, because even though they have, oh gosh, how many different, I wrote it here, something like 80 different languages, but five principal languages. They learned each other's languages. So we would sit at the tennis club and we'd have all these discussions. And in the middle of the sentence, they might switch from twee to akan to Mina. And I couldn't get the ear for the language because they kept switching between them. So, I learned very little of any local language in Ghana. There are certain things that we would consider negative. They would tend to snap their fingers if they wanted somebody's attention. They would also use the term small boy, whether the guy was 50 or, small boy. And they use the word fetch. Small boy, fetch the ball. That would not go over well here. One guy at the embassy said, I could just see myself at the New York airport, at JFK, saying, small boy, fetch my bag. Said I'd be without teeth. One day I went home and the guard at my house, who was from the north and had a very, very pronounced accent, said, oh, madam, let's see if any of them you can understand. The lady, she come go, I don't get the name. And I asked him to repeat it. The lady, she come go, I don't get the name. And I was like, okay. Finally, on the third time, I had him slow down, and he was saying, the lady, she come go, she came and she left, and I didn't get the name, and I know get the name, But the way he was saying, the lady, she come go, I know get the name. So I said, we'll try to get the name for anybody that comes by. I said, but can you describe her? And he says, yes, big fat black lady. And her name, I said, oh, Rose. And for us, that doesn't go over well. But you can see the innocence in his face. He was describing the woman that he saw, and he didn't attribute any kind of negative to it. And in Zaire, one of my first disappointments was that any of you that were here 2 weeks ago, that they had this color consciousness, and they would tell me I didn't have to wait on Black people, as they said, even if it was a Black person speaking. And then if I was there and a white person came, they'd just drop everything and deal with the white person. And it was really annoying. Well, Ghana definitely didn't, they were not like that. They had a lot of pride in their own culture. I didn't see any extreme color bias there. They were really quite good about respecting each other's religion and culture. At the tennis club, we would not only have a Christmas celebration, but for Ramadan, for Muslim holidays, that everybody would participate. So it was really refreshing for me to see that. And it's something you don't ever hear about in the news in the United States. All you hear about is the conflict and the tribal warfare and everything. And I guess that's why Ghana and Senegal are two of my favorite countries. They have, I have it here, approximately 80 languages there, but the dominant ones are Ewe, Fanti, Twi, and Da. Most of them speak at least 2 or 3 of these languages, in addition to English. It's a very religious country, so you'd find a lot of the store names had something to do with religion. Now, there are numerous chiefs and queen mothers throughout Ghana, and the equivalent to the European throne is the royal stool. So whenever there were ceremonies with a new leader, it was called installment. There were a couple of things that, this is setting aside the cultural differences. This is at least acknowledging some of the positive things, Western culture. did, or what Western entities did. One of them was the Navy, the US Navy. They would schedule visits, port visits to various countries. They'd go down the east coast of the Americas and then up the west coast of Africa. And whenever they arrived, they would have a project in mind. You know, they would either build a building, build a school, or a community center, or whatever. They would come with all the equipment and do it in record time. It was something really amazing to see and very appreciated. Another one that is still one of my favorite charities, and this is not American per se, because the crew is from everywhere, from all over, but it's called the Mercy Ships. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, but they it's an international floating hospital equipped with doctors, nurses, technicians, medical supplies, operating rooms. And the notice would go out before their arrival to the given country. And Ghanaians in Ghana, they would trek from villages really far, you know, to avail themselves of the free surgery and expert care. They really did marvelous work. So that was just an aside. I should say that I spent a total of 5 years in Ghana. This first one was a 2-year assignment. And then I came back years later on a 3-year assignment. And the difference was like day and night. So, you know, at that time, from 1988 to 1990, many of the streets were dirt roads. They only had a couple of supermarkets, which would not meet most Americans' concept of a supermarket. It was almost impossible to find anything like fresh milk or something. Everything was powdered milk, or either powdered, or they had the non-refrigerated cartons. Fresh vegetables were not easy to come by, and very little variety was available. On the positive side, though, if you ever wanted to get anything made, the tailors were incredible. You could take something, just take a picture of something, or take another dress or pantsuit or whatever, and they would copy it. They would make their own patterns. You know, it was really fantastic. And because electricity was a problem, most of they had foot operated sewing machines and irons that were actually heated on coals. But the job that they did with it was incredible. The other thing that was mentioned in one of our embassy meetings was that Ghana had the highest, what do they call them? I'm blanking out on the word. I think they call it retention rate of any country in the world, meaning that when they went abroad, you know, because a lot of them studied in Canada, the UK, and the US, they sent more money and for a longer period of time than any other country. And and the other thing was, like, which was evident at the tennis club, was that many of them, after being in the States or Canada or the UK for 30 years during their all their adult working life, once they retired, would come back to Ghana, you know, build a home, and you know, they wanted to come back and help their country. So at this point, partially to give me a break, but also to hear your views, I want to know, because many of you have traveled abroad or lived abroad, and I would like to hear some of the different culture, not just Africa, but from any country. What cultural differences did you learn of or have to deal with? Are there any volunteers? Anyone?
Oh,
Okay, Carmen.
I just wanted to respond to what you were saying about being identified as white.
Uh-huh.
That always cracked me up too. I was always horrified when I would be referred to that way. But I found that a lot of times that was just a way for them to refer to you as a Westerner. Sometimes it didn't even have to do with color. They associated, certain characteristics with Westerners as just simply white. So that was one thing. In fact, you were talking one of the times about the word oyebo, which is a Yoruba word, literally means pale skin. And when I visited some friends in Nigeria, and of course the people continue to call me oyebo, and I would be highly offended until I found out that my friend, who is from a small village in Nigeria, who was educated in the West and lived in the West. But when he returned home and he drove up in a car to his village, they called him Oyebo because they associated him with the West, since he had been to the West and educated and so on, so forth. So that didn't make me feel better, but it made me understand the context a little better. So
I think I mentioned at the last session that my ex-husband, we had a Peace Corps volunteer that visited us, had a dinner with us, and he told, Teo asked him whether he had learned any Mina, and the guy said yes, and he said, but they always referred to him as I've forgotten the word right now. And Teo said, well, you didn't learn very much because that means white person. But when we went to, our first stop was in Accra, and we were at a park, and there was some little kids, Togolese kids, and they saw him, in a suit looking Western, and they used the same term for him. He was highly insulted. And I said, well, maybe it has changed. It's more of a, like you said, it's a cultural thing, and associating it with Western culture. And you're absolutely right, because everywhere I went thereafter, I learned that was the case. Yes.
I was going to say, when I went to France in the 70s for the first time as a young student abroad, I couldn't get used to the toilet paper that was made out of like
newspaper.
Well, not really, but it was close to it. And it was brown on a roll. And then whenever you'd be in town and you have to go to the bathroom, they wouldn't let you in unless you paid for the bathroom in a cafe.
Yeah.
And then when you got in there and saw that there was a hole in the ground and that was the toilet, I'm like, this is what I paid for.
Yeah, right,
so
right.
They still have, I don't know if they still have those in France. I'm sure in some of the rural, not in the city of Paris. Maybe they've upgraded since then. But I do know in China, we had a similar experience. And I think Donald had a really nice experience. Because every time when we would take our bathroom breaks, the tour that we were on, they would let us off the bus and say, okay, or if we were in a restaurant, they'd say, go ahead and use the restroom now. Well, sometimes they'd have the actual toilet bowl,
the Western
style toilet bowls, and sometimes half and half, And if you were not that lucky and you didn't get, it was first come, first serve, you'd have to have the one the squatting one. So I would always ask Donald, did you experience that? And he said, no, what are you talking about? He never ever saw it until one time. And I don't know if you want
I told our other friends, I have bad knees. And this was maybe the third or fourth day on the tour, just like when we were in France and my knees swelled up. And we were at one of the sites, and the Western style bathrooms were full. And so I went in the Chinese, that's in the floor. And I got down there, but I couldn't get up. because my knees were swole up and, I'm trying to shimmy up the wall. And it took me like 20 minutes after I'd used the bathroom to finally get up. And that was a very unique experience. But, it's one of the funs of travel. It's a great after to talk about, but it wasn't funny at all at the time.
Delina, this shows the difference 10 years can make, because the reason I said newspaper is because literally the first time I was in Paris in the 60s, they cut up squares of newspaper and put them on a nail. And that's what you had to use, besides the fact that they were the Turkish toilets in the ground.
Yeah, well, these
And
were like,
I later learned, I came back and one of the instructors for a biology class or something was talking about if you ever had to deliver a child, that newspaper was the best thing to use because of something about the print. I don't know, but it just freaked me out when I had to use newspaper.
well, I was bagging a gift the other day, and the tissue paper that you put inside, that's the closest thing I could come to. That's how the toilet paper was, like the wrapping paper, tissue paper that you use on the top of the bag.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, there's another different cultural thing that you could probably relate to because of your experience in Senegal, especially in Senegal. The vendors tend to be very aggressive, and to say the least. But it's not any big thing. We have a sense of personal space.
Yes.
They don't have in Africa. And sometimes I had to stop a fight once. I mean, avoid a fight because one of the Black Americans that was at the buying stuff, and one of the vendors grabbed him by the arm to show him his wares. We don't, for us, you don't grab a person, you don't touch them. And so this guy was about to take him out.
Well, you talk about personal space. I was stationed in the Philippines, and one of the things that was unnerving is that, I grew up in South Central LA, and there's a certain distance people stay from each other, and you're not conscious of it. It's just the way things are.
Yes.
But in the Philippines, a totally different culture. Once you start to make friends with people, they move up and they touch you, and a guy may put his hand on your shoulder and talking to you, which is, that would be a no-no back home, but it's just a sign of, hey, I like you, we're friends and we're having a conversation and it's no big thing. But it's definitely an adjustment, for Americans to go to other countries and see that there's a different distance that a man stands from another man, or that a man, even like one time I was talking to this guy and he came up and he grabbed my hand and he was just, and I'm backing up and he's coming forward, I'm backing up. But that's just the way things are.
My kids, the first time they visited me in Zaire, we went around to different places. And we came back home and I asked them their impressions. And the two things they said that shocked me, because I'd gotten used to it. They said, boy, we didn't know there were so many gays in
Yeah.
yeah. And because men hold hands.
Yeah,
publicly.
They do.
And it's not. It's
just a
they're
sign of
in love with
friendship.
each other. That's the culture. And the other thing is that Mark Martin, the youngest at that time, said, God, I was really freaked out. You didn't tell us they were cannibals. I said, what do you mean cannibals? He said, and this is when we were still in the marketplace. He said, look over there. He said, they're cooking that kid. And I said, what? And I turned around and they had roasted a whole monkey.
Yeah.
And because they do eat them there. And it did really look like a kid. And I said, oh no, I said, Mark, that's, as far as I know, there's not cannibalism here, but that's a monkey. And he said, oh God, he looks like a kid. I said, yes, he does. But I guarantee you, that's.
Oh my
You know, they have, I had trouble getting used to some of the Central African cuisine because they eat a lot of insects and they'd sell the caterpillars, you know, they make, so you could make sure that they're fresh and they put them right in your face, you know. I was like, well, I was like, thanks so much. But, and that's part of the national dish of now the Congo.
I'm sorry.
You know, so the West African cuisine I love, you know, but
Yeah.
Central Africa, I couldn't get over my own prejudices.
I think Godfrey and Elaine's hands are up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the first time we went to Jamaica, well, we had a opportunity that came up at the last minute because somebody had dropped off from the trip. So we just got it together and went. We didn't know anything really about the, you know, the culture and different habits of, you know, people in Jamaica. So one of the things that we did was, you know, you see McDonald's and you see the Colonel sign and everything. So we running around, kept trying to, you know, get American food and everything. And we kept saying, it doesn't taste the same. This food is awful. So like midweek, they had like a buffet at the place where we were staying. And they had all this food. And we said, oh my God, the food was so good. We said, we learned, well, it was a good lesson, you know, to learn about the cuisine of wherever you're going, you know, learn about, you know, that, you know, part of that culture. And it was like night and day, you know, because we were in at someone else's home, but we wanted the food to taste like it did at our home.
Yeah.
When we went to
Deborah?
When we went
Wait.
to South Africa, we were talking about touchy-feely people, and I didn't notice that much there, but we always was on, you know, on alert of cultures and how things work, especially when we were walking through some of the cities. We went and did our laundry at one of the places in the city, and we had to watch for people making left turns in front of us and all that stuff. But we were on the bus going across the country, and we stopped at this gas station, sort of like store, where they had, and also a restaurant all combined. And so the bus left off everybody. We all went inside this place, and we're looking at you know, they had like different things that you could eat, regular food, and also things like nuts and chips and stuff like that. So when I was in there, I caught eye with this other guy who looked at me, and then he started coming at me, and I said, I don't know this guy, you know. And then he comes up and he holds his hands like this, hey, you know. And I said, who is this? And then all of a sudden, I feel this touch on my butt. I said, oh no, this is not gonna work. So, and I realized he went for my wallet, but my wallet was not in my back pocket. I always keep my wallet in my front pocket, so I know where it is. He might come behind me and take my wallet. And he was reaching,
wow.
and I realized that, and I just pushed him away. I said, get away from me. And, and I don't know. I guess he kind of left. But yeah, you get all kind of things that are different. But some things are the same. Some things are the same. You know.
One of the things that I had to get used to is that, like, when people come visit me at home, this was especially in Senegal, you know how we don't think about it, but if you say you have two sofas and you're sitting in one and then the other person would probably sit in the other sofa. Well, some of the women would come and sit right next to me, you know, I'd feel like, you know, because their thing is, I'm coming to see you. You know, we know each other. We visit, you know, talk and laugh, and so the closeness is sort of understood. It has nothing to do with somebody trying to hit on you or whatever. But at first, for us, because of our culture and how we've been raised, it's uncomfortable. You know, like with Donald, the guy, you know, touching you or you know, putting his arms around you or whatever, you know, it's around your shoulders when you don't, you know, you're not expecting that. So these are all things that that once you realize that it really, for one thing, it should show you how American you are. Although a lot of us say, oh, I'm not typically American until you're confronted with some of these things. And I have another friend who worked in the Arab world, and her thing was, especially her husband, would the men, when they talk, they're at a much closer distance than we're comfortable with, and you back up and they just keep coming, but they're talking right in your face, and it's hard to get used to. But they showed us a film in preparation as diplomats that I'll never forget. But I said that they'd have to just fire me if they expected me to adapt to that one. And it was somewhere in Asia that when they have a really important person and they're having a dinner for them, they have this special table and they eat monkey, and they clamp the monkey's head, a live monkey, and then literally chop, the top of his head off and eat the brains as he's still wiggling. And that's supposed to be an honor. I told him, I said, okay, there you just have to fire me, because I couldn't hang with that, But there are all kinds of things that people do worldwide that one of my French teachers at UCLA used to say that cuisine is probably the biggest prejudice we have. One person will turn up their nose at escargot and down chitlins without any problem.
Deborah had her hand up, Judy.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to say something about what you were talking about. In the Westerners are looked at as Obroni, like the foreigners. Yeah. So I was there as a student in Ghana. So I went to Legon. I went to UG for a year.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so, I mean, anybody who was from the university, a student we were with the California group, or anybody, was considered Obroni. Foreigner, Westerner, yeah. And something that I experienced is I like to cook. And I invited a young man from one of my art classes, my dance class, to come and have dinner with me. And they said, well, you should be careful about that, because that means, you're inviting someone, you're cooking for them like that, you want to be their wife. And natural for me to want to, cook for somebody, and have a meal with them.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, and they said another thing is when you're a female student and you have, your dorm room, if you don't want the gentleman to get a wrong idea, then don't invite him to sit next to you on your bed.
Exactly.
Have him sit on the, because that also means that, like, you want to start a relationship with that person. So yeah, there's a lot of subtleties and, the way we interact with each other, where it would be very casual at home to behave a certain way, but it has a different meaning when you're over there.
Yeah, that's true. The first time I went to Japan, one of the things that surprised me, and I said, oh gosh, if I do it like that, it's easy. But when they use the chopsticks, they have their head almost in the plate. And I said, oh, that makes it easy. And we use chopsticks at Asian restaurants, but we want to do it the American way, where you bring it, and I said, wow, if you just scoop it, that's, but then I know if I come home and do that, and I'm not Asian, then people just think I'm a pig, Does anybody have it? I haven't, other than Japan, I still want to do some traveling in Asia, because I haven't had that experience. I'd also like to go to New Zealand, and I'm fascinated by the Maoris. But does anybody else have any examples of culture? Yes. Uh-huh. Godfrey?
Oh, okay. I just want to No, is anybody ever noticed, like, I know because of COVID, we notice this more, but we notice that a lot of people maybe from another country or something like that, when you're standing in line at a store and they're like right on top of you,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
I think that's the way they do things there or what, but you always try to get your space and it's not there.
Uh-huh, yeah.
I
And
went
their concept of personal space is so different.
different, yeah.
you
Went to
know.
New Zealand once. The biggest thing I had to learn how to do is when I went there, I was thinking that I would help out in driving because we were driving all through the country.
Uh-huh.
And I got there, my son goes, "Oh, I left my license at home." And my daughter-in-law did the same thing. So I said, "I'm driving, so I'm be the only driver now." You know, I brought back bad memories. But anyway,
That was in New Zealand? New
but
Zealand?
anyway, New Zealand, yeah. The
So they-
difference about
they-
New Zealand, it's on the
They
wrong
drive on the other side
other
too. don't
side, and you have to
Yeah.
get used to that. Because I turned one time and I was going against the traffic. Said, "Oh no, you can't do that." You know. Yeah, you
they?
have
Well,
to
when I drove in Jamaica, is the same thing.
Mhm.
You know, at first I was nervous. Will this work? And I really had no trouble adapting. What I had trouble with is, I drove to a supermarket successfully. Went in, came out, and in the parking lot, looked the wrong way and almost got hit.
yeah, yeah,
I said, more problems as a pedestrian.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had
the
an
line-
experience also when I was my first year abroad. We used to line up in anticipation of them opening the cafeteria. So it didn't matter if we were in the city. The first city that I experienced this in was in the city of Pau, which is in the south of France. And then we went to Bordeaux for the remainder of the year. Same exact thing would happen. The Americans would line up in the city of Pau. It was a much smaller environment.
and the
So
French-
we would have to go upstairs. So we lined up one at a single file up the stairs. And then once the doors got open, all of a sudden there was a mad rush. All these French people would just get in front of us and push us out the way to get in first. When Bordeaux, it was even worse because they would almost like smash you. If you were short, and a lot of Americans were shorter than I was, you'd see them almost get lifted up in the crowd as they were pushing to get on a narrow stairway. They were trying to fit 20 wide people up the stairs to get the nasty food. I mean, the food wasn't good at all. Every day. It was like one girl, she finally just got out of, American girl, she got out of the line crying because it was just so horrible.
That was
We were all going to the same place eventually.
the French do not know how to line up.
No, and they would make fun of us. Like, ah.
They also don't know how to stay in any kind of when they're driving. They're all over. the place.
Right.
So
It's like first come, first serve, and
yeah.
we would laugh at
And
the
so-
Americans standing. Look at them standing in line.
After a while, for self-survival, I learned how to push my way through too. And then I went to visit my brother and his wife up in Stockholm, and we were waiting for a bus, and I'm starting to go toward the door, and they say, "Judy, you're not in France. People actually line up here." I said, "Oops." and so it is different, in different countries of Europe as well, because the French and the Italians, it's like you better learn how to survive on your own, because they take no enemies. Just really. Who? Oh, Denise.
Hi, just wanted to make a comment as well. You reminded me when you talked about people getting all up on you. When we were at the French Open and we got on the train coming home, you felt like you were being molested by the people because, I mean,
And sometimes you were.
and some man was I mean, there was no space. They were just on top of you,
Yeah.
standing there, and you could feel everything they had, and they could feel everything you had. Like, okay.
But they were cordial.
Yeah, they were cordial. Anyway, I just wanted to, you made me remember that.
Yeah.
Well, another thing is not so much in France. going back to the cuisine, I was staying in this small apartment and stuff, and each day I would stop by the store to get meat. And one day I was walking home with a friend who was from Mali. And I said, oh, wait a minute, I want to go and get this meat. And I came back and he said, you're not like most Americans. And I said, what do you mean? He said, most Americans don't eat horse meat. And I said, horse meat? Why are you talking to me about horse meat? He said, because that's what you just bought. And I said, how would I know? And he said, do you see the picture of the horse on the outside? I thought that was decoration. and it was my first time there. As a student, and I knew that the milk tastes different and the bread tastes different, so I thought, oh, this meat is a little different, but it's still good. But I had no idea. Huh? It was. I stopped, buying it after that, but I had been buying it almost, every other day for 2 weeks. Yeah, and I think they still sell horse meat for humans there, but it has to be shown that it's, now I know if I see a horse on the outside, it's not decoration. It's telling you that's where they sell horse meat.
Judy, how did it taste?
It was good, actually. And my stuff, I stopped eating it just because then it got to me, my head, not because I didn't like it. I thought, oh gosh, of course I don't feel the pity for cows. I don't feel the pity for fish, and also that in Africa, I had gotten used to, well, not just Africa, all through Europe, when they serve a fish, they serve the whole fish.
Yeah.
And I had a friend that came and visited me, and she ordered fish at a restaurant and she said, oh my God, he's looking at me. And I said, who's looking at you? The fish. I was so embarrassed, and I asked the waiter to come, take the fish's head off. She didn't want to see the fish's head, but that's, very American, again.
In some parts of Africa, the fish eye,
Yeah,
or the goat
got it.
eye, or whatever, that's like
yeah.
the choice piece, and that's either reserved for
Yep.
the elder or the chief or the most
In
important person, and
Mexico,
sometimes you as the guest.
in Mexico as well. Yeah.
You know?
And just the recent trip I made to Costa Rica in January, there my sister-in-law who's from Mexico, it always bothers me to this day. I mean, she's been in the States for 40 something years, but she never puts paper in the toilet, in the toilet. She puts it in the trash can. And in Costa Rica, that was the same thing. They even had signs,
Yeah.
And getting used to that, especially with number two, was even in the hotels, some of the hotels, they said, don't put it in. I guess the plumbing is so bad, but it's another cultural thing to get used to.
Another thing is in America, and especially, in the West, California, we expect a whole lot of space. But,
Yes.
in 2008, my buddy and I, we went to Paris. And so we said, well, I heard that the rooms are kind of small. So, let's get the next size up. So we get what we think is a big spacious room.
Yeah.
We get there, and first the elevator, 3 medium-sized people might fit in the elevator in the hotel, which was on one of the main streets we're in. And I said, dang, these elevators are very, very small. Okay, so we get to our room, which we're thinking we got a nice spacious room, and it was like a closet. And this was an upgrade room.
Yes.
I was like, wow. But these old countries, and they retrofit everything. And so everything is smaller.
Yeah.
But, coming from California, it just, it wasn't what we expected.
One hotel that I stayed in, the elevator barely fit two. And again, like you said, feeling everything, the person behind you, I'd never been in an elevator that small before. Yeah, it's different.
You've been into a hotel room when you went into the bedroom, you said, "Where's the bed? Where are we supposed to sleep?" And then you realized it was a Murphy bed,
Right.
Oh yeah.
Bring it down.
Yeah, my grandmother had one of those in LA. Seemed like everything in her apartment was pulled down, the ironing board, the bed. Yeah. Not the table, but I've seen those mini things up in San Francisco that they're selling now for big money still. What do they call them? Something like mini apartments or something like that. But the table comes down, the bed comes down. I mean, I would feel so claustrophobic in one of those. But I guess a lot of the young students, it's so expensive up there. But I guess we better close it. Yeah.
Everything tiny.
Huh? We're past time, so
Are you saying of a tiny house? Oh, sorry.
I couldn't. Say it again, Deborah.
Oh, I just was wondering if you were talking about those tiny houses and everything is really compact.
Yeah. But in San Francisco, they were not for the homeless. They were sold to, students and other people that wanted something economical. But we better close now. So, oops, I forgot. I think the next session is when I went back to the States. You had to come back to the States. They called you to get you back into the American culture or something like that. So for a year and a half, I came back, and it really was a shock. Yeah, I found out how much I had changed. So we'll talk about that next time. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Ed and Pearlie. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.